All right, guys, we got some really big crypto news. Now, we're going to start off with Coinbase is on the cusp, I think, of crushing the SEC for good. Gary Gensler's already taken two big punches to the face, and Coinbase might just finish him off with a roundhouse kick to the face. Why is that? Because Uniswap got their case dismissed on securities issues, and they're the same arguments as the SEC is making against Coinbase. Now, let's not make a mistake. It wasn't the SEC suing Uniswap, it was private investors, but who knows? Maybe it was the SEC egging them on in the background, and that's actually what a lot of people are suspecting. And even more than that, it's the same judge that's ruling in the SEC and Uniswap case. So things not looking too good for Gary Gensler. Now, we have to make the distinction that it's not the same case. Why? One, because Uniswap is a decentralized exchange and Coinbase obviously is a centralized exchange. So just because Uniswap did not actually have responsibility for the coins that listed on Uniswap, it does not necessarily mean that Coinbase does not have responsibility for the coins listed on Coinbase. But a lot of lawyers are saying that the Uniswap case does not bode well for the SEC. And the Coinbase case might actually be more important for crypto and the SEC than the Ripple case. And the SEC might definitely appeal the Coinbase case, but as we see, appeals generally do not work, and the law remains the law of the land until the SEC wins that appeal, if they win that appeal. So there's a lot of stuff to actually unpack here with this Uniswap case. A lot of people thought, oh, it's just a DEX, it helps DeFi. Yes, it does actually indeed help DeFi, but that definitely helps the Coinbase case as well, because they're both exchanges, even though one's centralized, one's decentralized, and it's the same exact arguments being made with the same exact judge. And the judge basically smacked the securities reasoning down, saying that Congress has not really made any rules in regards to this, and the SEC should not overstep its bounds. So like we said yesterday in the SEC, that crypto might be getting a second wind in the United States, the courts are actually reining the SEC in. And the thing is, the SEC appeals process is going to be a very long one. They're not going to get emergency appeals like they're trying in the Ripple case. They're going to have to go through years and years and years. And I think in that time, other lawsuits are going to come through which detract from the SEC's case. And Gensler might actually be gone by then, especially if, the Democrats lose the election, he's going to be replaced. But even if they don't lose the election, the pressure is actually building a lot on Gary Gensler to resign. We have people from both parties basically calling on him for him to resign, and pretty much every single person in the crypto industry is calling for Gensler's resignation. So Gensler is not very popular, and he's definitely not doing very well in terms of what he's going to do or not do for cryptocurrency. So Gensler is a little bit screwed right now, and that's kind of good, and his losses are piling up. And some people, even that are anti-crypto within the party, might actually think he needs to be replaced, but because he's not doing a very good job. You also have the speculation with the SBF trial that the SBF is going to say something about Gensler that could detract from him even more, although I think that's a speculation, and that's not actually going to happen. So the thing is, the SEC is basically up a creek without a paddle right now, because they are chain losing these lawsuits, and the Coinbase might be the latest one that's actually tacked on, because at least one aspect of Coinbase and Uniswap is very similar. Congress has actually not made any laws regarding this, and they did rule that the individual developers of these protocols are responsible for their projects, not Uniswap itself. But once again, one's decentralized, one's centralized. That could make all the difference in the decision. But I think this is Judge Falius, and she actually said that, the thing is, this This decision, it has to be up to the Congress. It has to be up to the legislature. The judicial branch should not actually make these decisions, and neither should the SEC. So a lot of the judges are not seeing things in Gary Gensler's light. And Gary Gensler is desperately trying to win some of these cases. I think he got really, really happy with the NFT lawsuit, but then he got smacked down with the Grayscale lawsuit and the Uniswap lawsuit. And I think the Uniswap lawsuit actually got lost in the backwash of the celebration of the Grayscale lawsuit, which was really big because that had to do with the Bitcoin ETF. But I don't think people realize how big that Uniswap lawsuit actually was, because it could actually go a long way to protecting all these exchanges and getting them to list more coins. Trust me, like for VET, I believe that Coinbase is on the cusp of listing VT and VTHO, but they have to get the case dismissed first because they don't want to be in more trouble than they are. Now, they're not delisting coins like they did delist XRP a couple of years ago because they believe they can win against the SEC. But if they don't get the coins dismissed, they might actually have to delist the coins just because they're afraid they might be violating the law if they actually lose the case. But the thing is, like, the Uniswap case did get dismissed. The SEC is using the exact same arguments for the Coinbase case, and the judges do not seem to favor the SEC right now. They're getting tired of Gary Gensler's shenanigans. I mean, who can blame them? Who isn't? But because of that, I do think Coinbase is on the cusp of completely crushing Gary Gensler and the SEC, and he might just have to go home running to mommy after a while. So that's the whole case with Uniswap and the SEC. I do want to talk about Hbar. They have a very, very big unlock coming up, but not all of it is purchase agreements, and the purchase agreements also have a caveat, so it might not actually dump. There is a 1.5 billion Hbar unlock, I think tomorrow, and 1/3 is going to purchase agreements. The other 2/3 is development funds. Now, the thing is, like, the development funds might be sold too just to fund the project, and I think some of them will. So you might see a bit of a dump. But the 1/3, 500 million going to purchase agreements, there's a caveat to that. Usually that would be really bad because people want to like sell out and make money. But in these purchase agreements, the people that purchase these Hbars wouldn't actually be making money because I believe the purchase agreements were at 9 cents. I was told they were at 9 cents, and right now you can see Hbar is at 5 cents. So if you buy at 9, sell at 5, that's not a profit, that's a loss. So I think it's very likely that they wouldn't actually sell those for a loss right now. So there might not be much selling going on with the Hbar purchase agreements. But it is something that we have to pay attention to. It is something that we have to be careful of because there is so much Hbar being unlocked. And remember, there's still $1 billion to development funds. Part of that will go into Treasury, so obviously it's not going to get sold immediately, but some of it might just be sold to fund those projects. Hbar has actually been retracing really, really hard ever since the last pump, so there might not be a giant dump tomorrow. But I would actually be careful, and maybe I wouldn't buy Hbar until a little bit afterwards, unless you think Bitcoin is going to pump altogether by tomorrow afternoon, which I don't think it is. Yes, the labor reports did come in. It showed job growth, but the job growth is much, much slower than what people expect. I think that might have been the initial pullback today, but in the long run, that's actually good for crypto because it does actually get the GDP. I mean, it does actually get the Fed to reconsider twice about raising the interest rates even more. Why? Because their rate hikes are actually proving effective. And if they do it too much more, they will completely crash the economy. And I don't actually think that's what the Fed is after. I do actually believe the Fed is mainly trying to slow down the economy without having a hard landing. I don't really know if that's possible or not. But with the news actually coming in, I do actually think that the Fed will actually slow down. And we may not have another rate hike, which would be really good for the market. And of course, last of all, we have to talk about RFK. He wants to back US debt with crypto. Now, he only wants to back a partial debt with crypto. They were talking about 10%. But 10% of the US debt is still $3 trillion. If you remember, the market cap of the entire crypto market is like $1 trillion right now. The market cap of Bitcoin is like half of that. So Bitcoin would have to be 6x to actually back the 10% of the US debt. And US debt is projected to grow by about $2 trillion a year. So Bitcoin's market cap would have to grow about $200 billion a year for 10 years to actually keep up with that. Now, I'm not really sure if they're talking about backing it with Bitcoin, but if they were backing it with one crypto, I would expect it to be Bitcoin right now. I think this is more or less like a pipe dream at this point. Backing US debt with a volatile asset like Bitcoin, probably not a good idea. Some people were suggesting, why don't they back it with like USDC or USDT? But that doesn't really make any sense either, because if you're backing your fiat with a crypto that's backed by fiat, you're just backing yourself while backing yourself. And that doesn't really seem to make much sense. In fact, scratch that idea. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I think people are really guessing as to what's going on, which isn't really that surprising. But I think people are really hyped up for RFK. I would be interested if he did actually back US debt with crypto, but there's a lot of logistical problems with that. But that does show that out of all the candidates, RFK Jr. On either side is probably the most bullish towards crypto altogether, although he might just be bullish towards Bitcoin. So it's really hard to tell right now. But I do actually believe that, he would be a pretty good candidate, especially for the crypto crowd. Don't think he's getting through the primaries, but I really hope he does. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.